The dust swirled as gunfire peppered the abandoned building where Sergeant Vidor's squad took their last stand. 2 wounded, ammunition critically low. Elowyn Thorne sat quietly in the corner, the analyst everyone dismissed. "Stay out of the way," Vidor had ordered her, as usual. When the helicopter finally approached through enemy fire, it didn't land at their position. It touched down directly in front of Thorne. The side door slid open. Special operators gestured urgently, for her alone. The look on Vidor's face as realization dawned was worth 1,000 words. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more untold military narratives that challenge what we think we know about those who serve. The relentless desert sun beat down on forward operating base Scorpion as Sergeant Cassian Vidor strode through the command tent, his weathered face set in its perpetual scowl. Maps and surveillance photos covered the tactical table where his elite squad waited for the pre-mission briefing. At 38, Vidor carried himself with the confident authority of someone who had survived 3 tours and brought most of his people home each time. "Listen up," Vidor barked, silencing the casual chatter. "High Command wants eyes on this compound." He tapped a satellite image showing a remote structure nestled in the foothills. Local assets report unusual activity, possible high-value targets. The squad leaned in, studying the terrain. 6 specialists, each handpicked for their expertise. Lieutenant Rhodes, the sharp-eyed sniper, Corporal Ashton, demolitions expert, Specialist Jensen, their medic, Zephyr Reeves, communications wizard, and 2 seasoned rangers who handled point and rear security. All wore the subtle modifications of veteran operators, customized gear, lucky talismans, the unmistakable confidence of soldiers who had faced death together. The tent flap opened and Elowyn Thorne slipped in quietly. Unlike the soldiers with their personalized equipment and battle-hardened demeanor, she wore a standard-issue uniform without modifications. Her observant eyes took in the room as she clutched her tablet to her chest. At 31, she moved with the careful precision of someone trying not to draw attention. Lieutenant Rhodes noticed her first. "Ah, our Pentagon babysitter arrives." Vidor barely glanced up. "Find a corner, Thorne. Try not to disturb the professionals." Elowyn took a seat at the back, her face revealing nothing as she opened her tablet. The team had been saddled with her 3 weeks ago, some analyst from intelligence headquarters sent to observe field operations. None of them had bothered to learn exactly what her role entailed, but they all shared Vidor's annoyance at having to accommodate a desk jockey on actual combat operations. "We'll approach from the southwest ridge," Vidor continued, tracing the route with his finger. "Satellite shows minimal activity between 0200 and 0400. We'll insert here, establish observation posts, gather intel on personnel and equipment, then extract before dawn." "Sir," Elowyn interjected as Vidor outlined the approach route, "satellite thermal imaging shows consistent patrol patterns along that ridge. The eastern approach offers better cover and fewer thermal signatures." The squad exchanged glances as Vidor straightened, fixing Elowyn with a cold stare. "Intelligence analysts don't run operations, Thorne," Vidor cut her off sharply. "They stay behind desks where they belong." Several squad members exchanged amused glances. Corporal Ashton mockingly whispered, "Someone brought a librarian to a gunfight." Elowyn fell silent, making notes while the briefing continued. The camera caught subtle reactions, her eyes narrowing at key details, fingers occasionally pausing over her tablet. Though her expression remained neutral, someone watching carefully might have noticed the calculated assessment in her gaze. "We move in 6 hours, Vidor concluded. "Gear check at 2100, wheels up at 2200. Any questions?" When no one spoke, he nodded. "Dismissed." The squad filtered out, leaving Elowyn alone with her tablet. Only then did her composed expression falter slightly, a flicker of concern crossing her features as she studied the satellite imagery more closely. Later that night, Elowyn sat alone outside the barracks, the blue glow of her tablet illuminating her face as she studied satellite imagery with intense focus. The compound looked ordinary enough, a collection of stone and concrete buildings that could serve any number of purposes. But something about the communications array on the northern structure troubled her. Zephyr Reeves, the team's communications specialist, approached with 2 steaming cups. "Coffee?" he offered, sitting beside her. "Black, like your clearance level probably isn't." She accepted it with a small smile. Thanks. Don't take Vidor personally, Zephyr said, looking up at the stars. Lost 3 men on bad intel last deployment. Trust issues run deep. I'm not here to make friends, Elowen responded quietly. Just to do my job. Zephyr nodded, respecting her space. Well, if you need anything. After he left, Elowen's tablet pinged with an encrypted message. She glanced around before opening it, typed a complex response code, then systematically deleted all traces. For just a moment, her demeanor shifted. Something harder, more focused emerged in her posture before she carefully reassumed her unassuming analyst persona. The camera pulled back as she stared toward the distant mountains, revealing that despite her isolated position at the edge of camp, she had positioned herself with perfect sight lines to all key operational areas of the base. 6 hours later, under cover of darkness, the squad moved silently across the rugged terrain. Vidor led with Rhodes close behind, their movements fluid and practiced. Elowen kept pace better than they expected, moving with surprising agility over the difficult ground. Still, Vidor positioned her in the middle of the formation where she could cause the least trouble. The mission proceeded according to plan until they reached the observation point overlooking the compound. Vidor signaled a halt, raising his night vision goggles to study the structures below. Something's off, he muttered. Activity levels higher than intelligence indicated. As if on cue, floodlights blazed across the compound. Shouts in a foreign language echoed through the valley as armed figures poured from buildings. We're compromised, Rhodes hissed. How did they know? Vidor didn't waste time on questions. Fall back to secondary position. Move! The squad retreated efficiently, but the element of surprise was lost. Within minutes, they found themselves under fire from multiple directions as enemy forces closed in with surprising coordination. This isn't a regular militia, Zephyr observed as they took cover behind an outcropping. Their comms are encrypted military grade. Someone's feeding them positioning data. Vidor made a split-second decision. We need better defensible ground. There's an abandoned village 2 clicks east. Move in pairs, leapfrog coverage. The retreat became increasingly desperate as enemy forces seemed to anticipate their movements. By the time they reached the village, Jensen had taken a round to his thigh and Ashton was nursing a graze to his shoulder. Gunfire peppered the abandoned clay building where Vidor's team had taken defensive positions. What should have been routine intelligence gathering had spiraled into chaos when they encountered forces far beyond what intelligence had indicated. Sandstorm 2, cover the east approach, Vidor shouted into his radio, dust cascading from the ceiling with each nearby explosion. Reeves, what's our comms status? Zephyr frantically worked his equipment. Still jammed, sir, getting interference patterns I've never seen before. In the corner, Jensen lay against the wall, blood seeping through a field dressing on his thigh. Nearby, Elowen worked intently on her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Thorn! Vidor spotted her and stormed over. Stop playing with your damn iPad and make yourself useful. He tossed her a medical kit. Pressure on Jensen's wound, and stay out of the way. She caught the kit without looking up, then moved to Jensen's side. As she repacked his bandage with practiced efficiency, she quietly asked, Before you were hit, what exactly did you see in the north compound? The room with the communications array? Jensen winced as she tightened the bandage. Why? Just some standard equipment, laptops, radio gear? While maintaining pressure on his wound with one hand, Elowen discreetly slipped a small device from her boot and photographed documents partially visible in Jensen's vest pocket. Her movements were so fluid and natural that Jensen didn't even notice, focused as he was on the pain in his leg. Hold this pressure steady, she instructed him, guiding his hand to the bandage. I need to help with communications. Across the room, Vidor finally established patchy radio contact. Sandstorm actual to base. Extraction required. 2 wounded, heavy opposition, coordinates follow. The response came through static. Negative on immediate extraction. Assets diverted. Hold position. We can't hold, Vidor argued, ducking as bullets shattered what remained of a window. We're outnumbered and outgunned. During this exchange, Elowen moved to a window, using her tablet to scan frequencies. Her eyes narrowed as she detected something. Following the signal, she located a hidden transmitter tucked into a wall crevice and disabled it without anyone noticing, pocketing its core component. Vidor, she called, her voice taking on a subtly different quality. Enemy communications suggest they're bringing in reinforcements from the north. We have maybe 30 minutes before they surround us completely. Vidor looked at her sharply. How do you know that? I'm monitoring their radio traffic, she replied, her voice returning to its usual unassuming tone. It's part of what analysts do. Vidor didn't have time to question further as another volley of gunfire hit their position. Rhodes, what's our ammo situation? Running low, sir. Maybe 20 minutes of sustained fire. As the sun began to set, Vidor organized their final defensive positions. Conserve ammunition, single shots only, confirm targets. He turned to Elowin. Thorn, rear of the building. Stay back, stay down, stay out of the way. That's an order. She nodded, moving to the designated position, but her eyes regularly checked her watch with subtle concern. As darkness fell, she positioned herself with clear sightlines to both the northern sky and the squad's positions, her hand occasionally drifting to check a concealed device in her boot. The situation grew increasingly desperate over the next hour. Enemy fire came in systematic waves, probing their defenses from different angles. Vidor and his team responded with disciplined bursts, making each round count, but their ammunition dwindled dangerously. Last mag, Rhodes announced grimly, ejecting an empty magazine and slapping in his final one. 10 rounds left. Vidor positioned himself at a collapsed section of wall, picking off targets with measured precision. Make every shot count. From her position at the rear, Elowin watched the darkening sky with increasing intensity. She checked her watch again, then subtly adjusted her position closer to the building's back entrance. Her tablet displayed a countdown timer only she could see. 5 minutes remaining. 4 minutes. 3. A message flashed across her screen. Keynote confirmation required. With practiced movements hidden from the others, she entered a complex authentication code, then deleted it immediately. Her expression remained calm, but her body tensed like a coiled spring, ready for action. 2 minutes. 1. The distinctive thump-thump-thump of helicopter rotors suddenly cut through the gunfire. "Extraction's here!" Zephyr shouted with relief, his exhausted face lighting up at the sound of approaching rotors. Vidor raised his binoculars, scanning the horizon. His expression shifted from hope to confusion as he tracked the approaching aircraft. Something's wrong. They're approaching from the north, not the extraction corridor. The Black Hawk came in fast and low, seemingly oblivious to tactical protocols. More strangely, it flew directly over enemy positions without taking fire. The aircraft should have been riddled with bullets, yet it proceeded unharmed. They should be landing at the extraction point, Vidor muttered, watching as the helicopter banked sharply toward their position. What the hell are they doing? Corporal Ashton crawled to Vidor's position. Sir, that's not standard extract protocol. Could be hostile. Vidor nodded grimly. Be ready for anything. Instead of heading to the designated LZ 500 meters southeast, the helicopter descended dramatically into the small courtyard directly behind the building, precisely where Elowin had positioned herself. Thorn! Vidor shouted, suddenly realizing she was exposed. Get back inside! The side door of the helicopter slid open before it even touched down, revealing 4 heavily armed operators in unmarked tactical gear. Their equipment was top tier but bore no identifying insignia or unit patches. They scanned the area with professional efficiency, then made direct eye contact with Elowin. The lead operator, a solid figure with a close-cropped beard, made a sharp, "come here now" gesture specifically to her. Thorn, get down, Vidor shouted, assuming she was exposed to danger. But Elowin was already moving toward the helicopter with purpose. Her entire demeanor had transformed. Her stooped posture straightened, her movements precise and efficient, nothing like the awkward analyst they'd been babysitting for weeks. She pulled a specialized communications device from her boot and flashed a series of coded light signals to the helicopter crew. Vidor watched in stunned disbelief as the bearded operator handed Elowin a tactical vest and weapon, which she donned with practiced efficiency. There was no hesitation, no confusion. She handled the equipment with the confidence of someone returning to familiar tools. A voice crackled over all their radios, a frequency that had been jammed moments before. Keynote is secured. Package Lazarus is confirmed. Enemy fire intensified, focusing on the helicopter. Elowin turned back, making eye contact with Vidor across the distance. For the first time, he saw her clearly, not as the annoying analyst, but as someone operating at a level far beyond his comprehension. An RPG streaked toward the helicopter, its fiery trail cutting through the darkening sky. Without hesitation, Elowen raised her weapon and fired with expert precision, detonating it mid-air in a spectacular explosion that illuminated the entire courtyard. "Fall back! Extraction point Bravo!" she shouted, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. The special operators fanned out, providing covering fire with devastating effectiveness. The bearded leader gestured urgently to the squad. "Move! Now!" Vidor remained frozen for a critical moment as his world tilted on its axis. The woman he'd dismissed, the analyst he'd ordered to stay out of the way, was clearly the primary asset, the actual mission objective all along. Rhodes grabbed his shoulder. "Sir, orders?" Snapping back to commander mode, Vidor signaled to his team. "Fall back by pairs. Move to extraction." As the squad broke cover and raced toward the helicopter, enemy fire intensified. Elowen and the operators provided precision covering fire, their coordination flawless as they systematically eliminated threats with minimal ammunition expenditure. Ashton took a hit halfway across the courtyard and went down hard, clutching his leg. Without hesitation, Elowen broke from cover, sprinted to his position, and dragged him toward the helicopter with surprising strength. "I've got you," she told him, her voice steady despite the bullets impacting around them. Vidor provided covering fire, witnessing a side of Elowen he never imagined existed, as she efficiently loaded the wounded soldier into the helicopter. The bearded operator covered their retreat while barking orders to the pilot. 30 seconds, we're taking too much fire." Vidor counted heads as his team scrambled aboard. "Jensen, Rhodes, Ashton, Reeves, where's Tanner?" "Still inside," Rhodes reported grimly. "East corner, pinned down." Elowen exchanged a quick glance with the bearded operator, who nodded once. Without a word, they both moved to the helicopter door. "Cover us," she ordered Vidor, not waiting for his response before leaping back to the ground. Vidor found himself automatically complying, providing suppressing fire as Elowen and the operators sprinted toward the building. They moved in perfect synchronization, covering each other's advances with practiced precision. 2 minutes later, they emerged with Tanner supported between them, making their final dash to the waiting helicopter as RPGs exploded dangerously close to their position. "Go! Go! Go!" Elowen shouted as they pushed Tanner aboard. The helicopter lifted immediately, banking sharply to avoid incoming fire as the door gunner laid down covering fire. The helicopter banked sharply away from the hot zone, interior lights casting harsh shadows across exhausted, dust-covered faces. Medics attended to the wounded while Elowen conferred with the bearded operator, transmitting data from her device to a secure terminal mounted in the helicopter's cabin. Vidor, still processing what he'd witnessed, finally approached her. "Who the hell are you?" The bearded operator intercepted, positioning himself slightly between them. "This is Commander Elowen Thorne, Naval Intelligence Ghost Program. Your entire mission was cover for her infiltration." The squad exchanged shocked glances. "Commander?" Rhodes repeated incredulously. Elowen looked up from her terminal, her voice now carrying natural authority. "The intel I gathered confirms what we suspected. There's an imminent attack planned on American soil. The target list was in that compound." "Why the charade?" Vidor asked, struggling to reconcile the analyst he dismissed with the operator before him. "My cover needed to be believable, even to you," she replied without malice. "The people we're after have moles everywhere. Your genuine dismissal of me was my best protection." "I treated you like," Vidor began, "like an analyst out of her depth, which is exactly what I needed," Elowen interrupted. "Your team performed exactly as required." The helicopter lurched as warning systems blared. "Surface-to-air missiles locked on," the pilot shouted. Without missing a beat, Elowen moved to the communications system, accessing a secure channel. "Keynote to Watchtower. Authentication Sierra Echo 9 Delta. The Symphony is confirmed. Lazarus Protocol is active." She entered a complex series of commands into the console. Immediately, sophisticated countermeasures deployed from the helicopter's defensive systems, releasing flares and electronic countermeasures that confused the incoming missiles. "We're clear," the pilot announced moments later, "but we need to change course. Primary extraction zone is compromised." Elowen turned to Vidor as the helicopter changed direction. "Your team wasn't just providing cover. You were gathering pieces of a puzzle without knowing it. Each patrol, each report, each encounter, they all helped build the mosaic. Together, we've identified a network that's been invisible for years." Vidor processed this information, studying her with new eyes. Then, recognizing her true rank and role, he straightened his posture in a gesture of newfound respect. "What happens now, Commander?" he asked. "Now," she said, turning back to her terminal, "we make sure what we found wasn't for nothing." The bearded operator, who had been monitoring communications, approached them. "Commander Thorne, Watchtower confirms receipt of the Lazarus package. They're mobilizing response teams to the 3 primary locations." "Good," Elowen replied. "And the asset extraction from Orion site?" "Successful. All packages secure." Vidor looked between them. "Would someone mind filling me in? My men nearly died back there." Elowen studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You've earned that much." She pulled up a digital map on her tablet. 6 months ago, we detected chatter about something called Symphony, a coordinated attack on multiple U.S. targets. We identified this region as the command center but couldn't pinpoint the exact location. "So my team was bait?" Vidor asked, tension evident in his voice. "No, your team was misdirection," the bearded operator corrected. "While all eyes were on your conventional military operation, Commander Thorne was able to access their systems and extract critical intelligence." "The transmitter you found me disabling," Elowen explained, "was part of their early warning network. When I disabled it, I also uploaded a tracking virus to their communications array. We now have access to their entire operation." Rhodes, who had been listening nearby, joined the conversation. "So all that time you were stumbling around asking basic questions about tactical operations. I was mapping your routines, establishing my cover, and identifying patterns in enemy surveillance," she confirmed. "The more incompetent I appeared, the less likely anyone would suspect my true purpose." Vidor ran a hand over his face, processing the implications. "And the chopper? How did it fly right over enemy positions without taking fire?" The bearded operator, who finally introduced himself as Commander Tarek, answered. "That's classified, but let's just say we have technology that can temporarily confuse certain targeting systems." "What about Jensen's wound?" Vidor pressed. "Was that part of the plan too?" Elowen's expression softened slightly. "No. Every casualty was regrettable and unplanned. But I needed access to his vest pocket. He'd unknowingly photographed a key portion of their operations room during your initial approach." The conversation paused as one of the medics approached to check on Ashton's wound. After ensuring the corporal was stable, Elowen continued. "The Symphony operation targets 3 major U.S. cities with a coordinated attack using a new type of dispersal device. Thanks to what we gathered today, those attacks will be prevented." Vidor leaned back against the helicopter's vibrating wall, his expression unreadable. "All this time I thought you were just another headquarters bureaucrat getting in our way." "That was the point," Elowen replied. "Your irritation with me was my best cover." As the helicopter continued its journey to a secure extraction point, the team fell into exhausted silence. Vidor watched as Elowen returned to work, coordinating with distant command elements with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years in operational leadership. The persona of the awkward analyst had vanished completely. In its place was a commanding officer who moved with confidence and spoke with authority. Even Tarek, clearly a highly trained operative himself, deferred to her decisions. 3 hours later, they touched down at a forward operating base far from their original position. Medical teams rushed to meet them, transferring the wounded to proper care. As the rotors wound down, Elowen pulled Vidor aside. "Your team will be debriefed separately," she informed him. "Standard security protocols." "Will they know the truth?" he asked. She shook her head. "Only what they need to know. The Ghost program doesn't exist on paper, Commander Tarek. The official record will show that your team encountered unexpected resistance and was extracted by standard search and rescue assets." "And you?" "Intelligence analyst Thorne was separated during extraction and is presumed lost," she said matter-of-factly. Vidor considered this. "They deserve to know they were part of something important." "They will," she assured him. "Just not the classified details. Your team performed admirably under extreme pressure. That will be recognized." As they walked toward the debriefing facility, Vidor finally asked the question that had been bothering him since the extraction. "Why did you come back for Tanner? Your cover was blown. You had what you needed. Protocol would dictate immediate extraction." Elowen stopped walking. For the first time, he saw something genuine in her expression, Not the calculated meekness of the analyst, nor the cool efficiency of the commander, but something fundamentally human. "Because that's not who I am," she said simply. "No matter what the mission is, we don't leave our people behind." Vidor nodded slowly, a new understanding forming between them. "For what it's worth," he said, "I owe you an apology for how I treated you." "No apology necessary, Sergeant. You did exactly what I needed you to do." A small smile crossed her face. "Though you might want to be a little nicer to the next analyst they send your way. You never know who they might really be." Before Vidor could respond, Commander Tarek approached. "Ma'am, Watchtower is requesting immediate secure communication. The information we recovered has already led to 2 arrests in Virginia." Elowen nodded. "On my way." She turned back to Vidor. "This is where we part ways, Sergeant. Your team will receive new orders within 48 hours. "Will we ever know the full story?" Vidor asked. "Maybe someday," she replied, "when it's no longer classified." As she walked away with Tarek, Vidor called after her. "Commander Thorne." She paused, looking back. "It was an honor serving with you," he said sincerely, "even if I didn't know it at the time." Morning light bathed the military airfield in gold as transport planes and helicopters lined the tarmac. 3 days had passed since the extraction, and Vidor had spent most of that time in debriefings, explaining the mission's unexpected complications to increasingly senior officers. Something had changed in the tenor of the questions as the hours progressed. Less focus on their tactical decisions and more interest in their interactions with Analyst Thorne. Through the window of the briefing room, Vidor noticed a flurry of activity around a waiting private jet. Several high-ranking officials conferred in a tight circle, a general he recognized from Pentagon briefings, 2 individuals in nondescript suits who carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of intelligence officers, and a naval commander he didn't recognize. Among them stood Elowen, now dressed in formal military attire that fit her with the natural ease of long familiarity. Gone was any trace of the awkward analyst. This woman carried herself with authority, gesturing to digital displays as the officials nodded with rapt attention. The deception was gone. This was her true self. Lieutenant Rhodes approached, following Vidor's gaze. "Debrief finally over?" "Just finished," Vidor answered, not taking his eyes off the gathering outside. "You?" 2 hours of the same questions about Thorne, Rhodes said. "What she did, what she asked about, who she talked to. They're being thorough." "Did they tell you who she really is?" Rhodes shook his head. "Only that she was operating under deep cover and the mission was a success. Apparently we helped prevent something significant." Vidor nodded slowly. "That's more than they told me." As the officials began boarding the aircraft, Elowen paused, saying something to the general who nodded in response. She turned and walked purposefully toward the building where Vidor's team had gathered. "Looks like we're about to get some answers," Rhodes observed. The squad fell silent as she entered. Some straightened instinctively at her presence. Ashton, his leg now properly bandaged, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Jensen and Zephyr exchanged glances, clearly uncertain how to address the woman they'd dismissed for weeks. "At ease," she said, her eyes moving across the faces of the team. "I wanted to thank you personally before departure." "For what?" Ashton asked from his seat. "We didn't even know what the real mission was." "And that's precisely why it succeeded," Elowen replied. "What you did out there mattered more than you know. The intelligence we gathered has already disrupted 3 terrorist cells and identified key compromised assets." "So everything was a lie?" Zephyr asked. "All those times you asked me to explain basic comms procedures?" "Not everything," Elowen said. "I genuinely learned from each of you. Your expertise in your fields is why you were selected for this operation, whether you knew its true purpose or not." "Selected?" Vidor questioned. "You mean our deployment to this region wasn't coincidental?" Elowen's expression revealed nothing. "Your team's reputation for adaptability and resilience made you ideal candidates for the supporting role. The fact that Sergeant Vidor is known for his skepticism toward intelligence officers made your unit perfect cover." "So my attitude helped you," Vidor said, a hint of irony in his voice. "Immensely," she confirmed with the ghost of a smile. "The more you dismissed me, the less likely anyone was to suspect my true purpose." Jensen leaned forward. "What happens now? We just pretend none of this happened?" The official record will show that your team encountered unexpected resistance during a standard reconnaissance operation and was extracted by search and rescue assets, Elowen explained. Your actions will be commended, and there will be appropriate recognition for your service. And you? Rhodes asked. Where does Analyst Thorne end up in the official story? Separated during extraction and presumed lost, she said matter-of-factly. A regrettable casualty. The team exchanged uncomfortable glances at the clinical way she described her own official death. Why tell us any of this? Ashton asked. Why not just let us believe the cover story? Elowen paused, considering her answer carefully. Because you deserve to know that your sacrifices served a greater purpose. While I can't share the classified details, I want you to understand that what we prevented will save countless lives. She reached into her pocket and removed a small case, opening it to reveal 5 medals. These won't appear in your official records, and you can never display them publicly, but they recognize your unwitting participation in Operation Lazarus. She handed each soldier a medal, a simple silver disc embossed with a phoenix rising from flames, no text or identifying marks. When she reached Vidor, she held his gaze a moment longer than the others. Thank you for your skepticism, Sergeant, she said quietly. It provided the perfect cover. Vidor accepted the medal, studying it briefly before tucking it away. So what exactly was Symphony? What did we help stop? A coordinated attack on 3 major U.S. population centers, she replied, keeping the details vague. The intelligence we gathered has already led to significant arrests domestically and abroad. We? Rhodes questioned. The photographs Jensen took inadvertently captured key personnel. The communications data Zephyr collected while trying to break through the jamming provided crucial encryption patterns. Ashton's assessment of the compound's structural defenses revealed hidden access points. Elowen looked at each team member as she spoke. Each of you contributed pieces to the puzzle without realizing it. Outside, a staff officer approached the jet and signaled urgently to Elowen. I have to go, she said, glancing toward the window. Your team will receive new orders within 48 hours. Standard deployment, nothing connected to this operation. As she turned to leave, Vidor stepped forward. Commander. She paused at the door. Would you have left without saying goodbye? He asked. Something flickered across her face, a brief glimpse of genuine emotion breaking through her professional demeanor. Protocol suggested I should, she admitted. Clean breaks are standard procedure. But you're here, Vidor noted. I am. She glanced at the team. Some protocols deserve to be broken. With that, she departed, walking briskly toward the waiting aircraft. The team watched through the window as she rejoined the officials, immediately resuming her role as a senior commander. Well, Zephyr said after a moment, that's not something you see every day. No kidding, Jensen agreed. All this time I thought she was just another pencil pusher getting in our way. Vidor continued watching as Elowen boarded the jet. That was the point. As the officials began boarding the aircraft, Vidor made a sudden decision. I'll be right back, he told his team, heading for the door. Sir? Rhodes called after him, but Vidor was already jogging across the tarmac toward the jet. The security detail stiffened as he approached, but Elowen saw him coming and held up a hand to wave them off. She descended the jet's stairs to meet him halfway. Sergeant Vidor, she said formally, aware of the watching eyes. Was there something else? Vidor stood at attention and rendered a perfect formal salute, a gesture of profound professional respect that acknowledged her true rank and accomplishment. It was an honor, Commander Thorne, he said, genuine humility replacing his former dismissiveness. She returned the salute precisely, then relaxed into a more casual stance once she lowered her hand. The honor was mine, Sergeant, she replied. Your team performed admirably under extraordinary circumstances. If you ever need cover again, Vidor offered. Real cover, not just someone to treat you poorly. Elowen paused at the jet stairs, a slight smile forming, the first real smile they'd seen from her. I'll request you by name, Sergeant Vidor. With that, she ascended the stairs. The jet door closed behind her, and within minutes, the aircraft taxied toward the runway, carrying Elowen and her secrets away. Vidor rejoined his team, who watched him with curious expressions. What was that about, sir? Ashton asked. Respect, Vidor replied simply. Sometimes you don't recognize it until it's walking away from you. 3 months later, Vidor's team had been reassigned to a training rotation at Fort Irwin. The events in the desert had faded into the background of their daily duties, though each member carried the unmarked medal as a private reminder of their unwitting role in something larger than themselves. After a particularly grueling day of exercises, Vidor returned to his quarters to find an unmarked envelope on his desk. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message. Lazarus prevented 3 attacks. 2,743 lives saved. Thought you should know. E.T. He burned the note as any good soldier would with classified information, but the number stayed with him. 2,743 people who would never know how close they'd come to death, who would continue their lives unaware of the threat that had been silently neutralized. 6 months after that, during a deployment to Eastern Europe, Vidor's team was assigned a new intelligence liaison, a quiet, unassuming man who struggled with basic tactical concepts and asked too many questions. The team exchanged knowing glances but treated him with unexpected respect, much to the confusion of the other units. When asked about their unusual patience with the analyst, Vidor simply replied, "You never really know who someone is until you see them under fire." A year to the day after the extraction, Vidor received transfer orders to a specialized joint task force. The mission briefing was delivered by a familiar face, Commander Tarek, the bearded operator who had been on the extraction helicopter. "Good to see you again, Sergeant," Tarek said with a knowing smile. "Where's Commander Thorne?" Vidor asked directly. "Running the operation from headquarters," Tarek replied. "She specifically requested your team for this." "Did she say why?" Tarek's expression softened slightly. "She said she needed someone who wouldn't underestimate a seemingly insignificant asset." The mission that followed took Vidor's team deep into contested territory, providing security for what appeared to be a minor diplomatic attaché. Only Vidor knew the diminutive woman's true importance as she negotiated with local warlords and government officials. When their position was compromised, his team executed a flawless extraction, treating their charge with the respect her hidden rank deserved. Upon their return to base, Vidor found Commander Thorne waiting on the tarmac. "Well done, Sergeant," she said as his team disembarked. "You've learned to see beyond appearances." "I had a good teacher," he replied. Elowin nodded toward the operations building. "Walk with me. I have another assignment that requires your particular insight." As they walked across the airfield, their professional relationship now built on mutual respect rather than deception, Vidor reflected on how completely his perception had changed. The woman he had once ordered to stay out of the way now commanded his full attention and respect, not because of her rank or position, but because he had learned to see beyond the surface to the true capability beneath. In the year since the extraction, he had come to understand that true strength often hid behind unassuming facades, that the most valuable assets were frequently the ones others overlooked, and that his own preconceptions had nearly cost him the opportunity to serve alongside one of the most capable commanders he had ever known. "Something amusing, Sergeant?" Elowin asked, noting his expression. "Just thinking about first impressions, Commander," he replied, "and how spectacularly wrong they can be." She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "That's why they're the perfect cover." As they entered the operations center, a junior officer jumped to attention, startled by their arrival. He fumbled with his tablet, clearly intimidated by Elowin's presence. "At ease, Lieutenant," she said kindly. "We all start somewhere." The young officer relaxed visibly, grateful for her understanding. Vidor caught her eye and nodded slightly, acknowledging the lesson she continued to teach, that true leadership recognized potential regardless of rank or appearance, and that sometimes the most valuable team members were the ones others too quickly dismissed. Across the operations table, as Commander Thorne began briefing them on a new mission, Vidor saw the same quiet confidence he had glimpsed that day in the desert. The unwavering competence of someone who never needed to announce their value, who simply demonstrated it through action when the moment demanded. And he made a silent promise to himself that he would never again tell anyone to stay out of the way, without first considering who they might truly be.